Okay, welcome to the first ever English Danny channel live stream. I'm Dr. Don, and this is the first time we've done this, so there may be some problems, there may be some technical issues, but we're working it out on the job. We're doing it live here. Let's talk about what we're doing here on this first live stream for the English Danny channel. I have 4 segments planned today. I have a segment on a quick thinking father. I have a segment on Prince Philip's funeral. I have a segment on this day in history. And then at the end, I have a Q&A segment. So this is a segment where viewers can post questions or comments, and any reasonable and responsible question or comment will be read and addressed on the air if we get it in time. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them for us now. And we'll address them in segment 4. All right, well, let's get started with our first segment. So on our first segment, we have a video, a viral video showing it says a quick thinking father who's rescues his son from almost a certain disaster. And if you look at the video, the story that I saw on it says, Dad's quick reflexes save son from out of control car. And we can take a look at the video and learn some English actually from this video. Well, first of all, what are quick or fast reflexes? Well, you'll see that in operation in this video. Reflexes means your reactions, your physical reactions to something. And if you react quickly to something, you say you have quick or fast reflexes. And then in the video, if you hit play on the video, we can start going through it. You can see the father's quick reflexes in action. And also in the video, it says it's an out of control car. Out of control means you can see the car moving now. That's out of control. And there's the father's quick reflexes. You can see he'd scoop up his son and pull him out of the way. So the car, that's what out of control means. You can see it backing up rapidly, crashing in. That's exactly what out of control means. And quick reflexes, that's what that means as well. The footage that you see there is what's called surveillance footage. Surveillance footage means footage that's captured by a camera that's just put in place there. A camera that's just it's just a static camera looking at one thing. That footage that we just saw, the video we just saw, is an example of surveillance footage. And that's what that phrase means. And another phrase or word that you can learn from this is abruptly. In the story, it says the car abruptly starts moving backwards. And abruptly means quickly, suddenly, without any warning or without any sign that it might be happening. So that's what happens there. The car abruptly starts going backwards in a way that no one would expect. And it's only the father's quick reflexes that allows him to scoop up his son and move out of the car's way. And another word or phrase is presence of mind. So in the story, they say the father showed good presence of mind. Presence of mind means that you're aware of what's going on and you're able to respond to what's going on very quickly and very directly. So great awareness or presence of mind is what the father shows when he sees the car abruptly moving backwards and reacts to it. Okay, so that's another useful phrase there. And then one of the comments on this story says, the father and his son were at the wrong place at the wrong time. Wrong place, wrong time. That's another phrase that sometimes gets used, a kind of a slang phrase in English. There's 2 different ways of saying it. There's wrong place, wrong time, meaning you're in a bad normally the place will be fine, but because of the situation and because of the timing of it, you're at the wrong place at the wrong time, meaning something bad could happen. And then there's another way of saying it, right place, right time, which is the opposite sense, which means, it was just the perfect situation. Both the place and the time worked perfectly well for whatever it is we wanted to do. But that video is a case of being at the wrong place at the wrong time. And another comment I saw in the story said, oh, the father and his son had a close shave. A close shave. That's an interesting, also slang phrase in English. And it means a narrow escape, or came close to something happening. It could be something good or it could be something bad. Usually it's something bad. And close shave, it comes from the idea of shaving your face. A close shave means you got all the hair off. Your face is very smooth because you removed everything. So if you have a close shave with something, you came so close that you couldn't even feel the distance of a hair. So that idea of having a close shave means to come in very close contact with something without quite touching it. So it means for something bad almost to happen. So the father and his son had a close shave with a bad situation. But as it was nothing bad happened. They just stepped out of the way. So that's a case where we would say that's a close shave. Close shave with injury or maybe even death in that video because the car was coming very fast. Okay, so that's our first segment. Let's take a look at our second segment. The second segment today is on Prince Philip's funeral. And this was something covered all over the world. The BBC has a picture from the funeral, which we'll have up in a second. But let's talk for just a second about, well, who was Prince Philip? Why was this an important event? So this was an important event this week. Prince Philip was the husband of Queen Elizabeth, who is, I think, the longest reigning monarch in British history now. Prince Philip was married to Queen Elizabeth for 73 years, and he died on April 9th. He was 99 years old, and it was just 2 months before his 100th birthday. And in this picture, you can see the 4 children of Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth. On the far left in the picture, that's their oldest son, Prince Charles, who is the heir to the throne of England. And then behind him is Prince Andrew, I think. And then over to the right, the woman in front on the right, that's the Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth's daughter, Anne. And then behind her is their 4th child, their youngest son, and I think his name is Prince Edward. So that's the royal family there for their father's funeral. Prince Philip was actually born in Greece, and he moved to England when he was 18 years old. And he courted a young Prince Elizabeth and then married her, and was married to her for 73 years. And he was he's not British by birth, but he did speak English very well. He was educated partly in France, partly in England. And the reason why he's Prince Philip and not King Philip is he was just married to the Queen. So the way it works in England is you don't get to be styled king or queen just necessarily because you're married to the monarch. And in Philip's case, he was not of royal birth, but he was elevated to prince. And he was called the Queen's consort, meaning her husband, basically. And he was British. He became a naturalized British subject. I think he was in the British Army for a while. And so there's a lot of things you can learn about British culture, and then maybe a little bit about English from this event. It says in the story that a moment of silence was observed, partly because the funeral had to be very understated because of the coronavirus situation. A moment of silence. This is a common sort of way of recognizing a solemn event. Everyone shares a moment or minute of silence together as a way of recognizing some important event, usually the funeral or death of someone important. And another phrase that you can learn in the story, it says that Prince Philip was laid to rest. It says Prince Philip funeral, Duke of Edinburgh. He was also Duke of Edinburgh, laid to rest. So laid to rest is it's a very fancy or elevated way of saying that someone was buried. Okay, so buried is kind of blunt, a very blunt way of saying it. And then laid to rest is a more pleasant way of saying it. So it's a way of saying that a dead person was buried, is you could say they were laid to rest. And obviously, since this was the Prince of Great Britain and the consort of the Queen, BBC is going to say he was laid to rest. They're not going to say he was buried. That would be a little kind of too blunt for this situation. And let's see. Okay, so let's now think about our third segment. Let's move on to our third segment. Third segment is about this date in history. And I'm going to talk about 2 days, so 2 different days. And the reason I'm talking about 2 different days is because this live stream is broadcast around the world. And in some places, it will be April 17th. And in other places, it will be April 18th. So let's actually talk about this date in history, April 17th, and this date in history, April 18th. Let's start with the earlier one first. So what happened on April 17th? Well, one important event happened in 1970. On April 17th, 1970, the Apollo 13 lunar spacecraft returned safely to Earth. And why was this important? Well, right after its launch, and it launched on, I believe, April 11th of that year, they experienced a severe malfunction. Severe malfunction. What is a malfunction? That means for some technical problem, some device to go bad or to break down. And in their case, it was an oxygen tank that exploded on their spacecraft, meaning that these 3 astronauts on board the spacecraft were left 200,000 miles away from Earth without their expected supply of oxygen or their expected supply of electricity or without their expected supply of fuel. So many things were damaged on the spacecraft because of this malfunction, because of this accident that happened. And this put them in a severe logistical problem. And there's another good word is logistics or logistical. Logistics means planning or organization. So this is actually a term that's used a lot in business. Business logistics means organizing when things will be sent, where, and how they will be sent, or how something will be manufactured, what are the steps of its manufacturing. All of that kind of planning work is included under the term logistics. And in the case of the Apollo 13, they had a logistical problem of how can we get them using the fuel they have and the oxygen they have, how can we get them back to Earth safely? Because they were already moving very, very fast away from Earth. And they didn't have enough fuel to just turn around and come back. So they had to do a lot of little things that had never been done before. They had to do little. They had to use the repulsor rockets in different ways. And what they did was they made a slingshot around the moon. They slingshot around the moon and they came back to Earth. And they were able to do it safely. And on April 17th, 1970, they safely landed on Earth. And this event was portrayed in a Hollywood movie called Apollo 13, in which it shows exactly what happened. That was a dramatic recreation of those events. Okay, so there we go. And what about April 18th? So that's our second date in history, April 18th. Well, on April 18th, 1906, an event that was important in American history happened. And that event was the Great Earthquake, the Great San Francisco Earthquake. 1906, San Francisco, an earthquake which measured around 8.0 on the Richter scale. And if you don't know what the Richter scale is, that is a scale, a system for measuring the intensity of earthquakes and other seismic events, other events involving the shaking of the earth or movement of the earth. And 8.0 is quite high. So at 8.0 earthquake, that was quite severe. And as a result of that earthquake, 3,000 people died. And not only that, many buildings in San Francisco were destroyed. I think at the end, it was 30,000 buildings were destroyed by the earthquake. And not just the earthquake, but fires were created. So as a result of the destruction, fires broke out. And the fires were so severe that some buildings had to be blown up to create a firewall to prevent the fire from moving any further. A lot of people were trapped by the fires, and they had to bring in the U.S. Army and firefighters from all over the country to help battle the blaze. And 20,000 people had to be rescued from the fires. So the U.S. Navy had to send its ships in to rescue 20,000 people who were trapped by fires. So this great San Francisco earthquake happened, and it killed 3,000 people and destroyed 30,000 buildings, including most of the homes in San Francisco and most of the central business district of the city. So if you go to San Francisco today, there are very few buildings that are older than 1906 because of the Great San Francisco earthquake, that event that happened on this date in 1906. Now, I have one more segment today, and that is that's the Q&A segment. So here's our segment where we respond to questions and comments from viewers like you. Now, first, we have a comment or question that was left on, I think it was on the Facebook page or may have been our YouTube channel. I'm not sure exactly which, but someone asked about the difference between saying that something is predominantly true or something is usually true. What's the difference between predominantly and usually? And that's an interesting question. So here is one way to think about the difference between those two words. There is some overlap between the two words. So there's some sense in which the words are distinct, but some sense in which there is some overlap in meaning. And so there are some situations where you could use either word. But usually is a word that is almost entirely about frequency, meaning how often you do something, how frequently you do something. So, for example, you could say, I usually wake up at 9 o'clock. I usually wake up at 9 o'clock. You would not say, I predominantly wake up at 9 o'clock. You could, but that would be very unusual because this is a question about frequency. Predominantly is about it's equivalent in meaning to mainly or for the most part. So you would use predominantly in a situation where I could say something like, the people in my town are predominantly Koreans, meaning they're mainly Koreans. Mostly they are Koreans. So you could say predominantly, that's a more advanced level word than, let's say, mainly or mostly, but it has a similar meaning to those. I wouldn't say usually in that case. It would be because that's about what's mostly the case or mainly the case. That's not about frequency. So that's the difference between those two words. Usually is about frequency. I usually wake up at 9. I usually go to bed at 10. And predominantly is equivalent in meaning to mainly or mostly. All right. So do we have any other examples? And so we're waiting for some other examples. I'll talk a little bit more about, well, there is overlap between those two words. So sometimes they can mean, they can be used the same. So we've got a hi welcome from Ibad Khan. Welcome to you as well. How are you doing? Where are you from? And then I'm not going to try to I'm not going to try to pronounce that, but Namer from Peru says hi. He's from Peru. Welcome. So it's good to hear people. Matt Lindell says hi, guys. Hi to you as well, Matt. Hope you're doing well. Glad to meet you too. All right, so it's good to get some viewer feedback here. Always nice to respond to people. Let's see. Hi, what does portrayed mean? Portrayed is a way of meaning shown. Someone is shown in some way. They are portrayed in such a way. So you could say, for example, or it could also mean played in the sense of acted by. So in the movie Lincoln, the American president, Abraham Lincoln, is portrayed by the actor Daniel Day-Lewis. He portrays Abraham Lincoln. That means he plays or shows Abraham Lincoln. So he portrays him. And you could also say in a very famous portrait of George Washington that's in the White House, the president, the first president of the U.S., George Washington, is portrayed standing in front of the Capitol. Portrayed, he's shown. Okay, so that's an example of how you would use portrayed or shown. And you could see that the word portrayed has some similarities with the word portrait. And a portrait is a picture, right? A portrait is it could be a drawing of somebody or a painting of someone. So that's another way of saying shown. Alyssa Marie's totally blind. I hope not. And but says hello, and hello to you as well. Good to hear from you. Primarily. What about primarily? Primarily, mostly. Primarily also has a sense of, oh, lolly lolly. I've heard of lolly lolly. Welcome from France. Bonjour. Salut. And Suleiman says, thanks so much. Thanks so much to you as well. Very good to hear from you. Hi from BitTorrents. Good to hear from you. Ibad Khan is in Pakistan. Okay, welcome. Welcome from Pakistan. Andronico says hello from Chile. Welcome to you from Chile. And a welcomes from Morocco. Okay, so we're getting all over the world. Viewers from all over the place. Pakistan, Chile, Morocco, Peru, France. This is great. Alexander Litvinenko says hello. Okay, this is great. It's good to hear from all of you. What is the phrase, the fact of the matter? Well, the fact of the matter. This is kind of a cliche term. But actually, there's two related terms. There's matter of fact. If something is a matter of fact, it is true, right? It is a matter of fact. But if something is the fact of the matter, that's another way of saying it's, I guess, the truth of the case. It is the facts. The facts of the matter. The truth is probably the best way of defining it. You can see how the truth is a much shorter way of saying that. But the fact of the matter is just a phrase that people use as well. And so if I wanted to say something like, well, the fact of the matter is that this person is guilty. So I could say that in a trial, and it sounds a little bit more dramatic to say it that way. The fact of the matter is, this man is guilty. We got a welcome from Ukraine. That's really good too. Good to hear from people from all over the world. That's fantastic. Ghana. Okay, great. Okay. Jack says hello from Ghana. And another person from Pakistan. Do I know this country? Yes, I've met in one of my jobs overseas. I had a friend who was he was a volunteer worker from Pakistan. So I've met some people from Pakistan in my travels. Good to hear from you. Let's see. Any other good questions or comments? I'll try to answer any good, reasonable questions or comments from people. Where are you from? That's always good. I'm from the United States, as you know. Or maybe you don't know. If this is the first time watching, maybe you don't know that yet. You might have questions about something that I talked about in one of the segments. You can ask me that as well. Some of them I might have to look up, but others I might be able to answer on the fly. On the fly, that's another phrase, and it means to do something on the spur of the moment, to do something in the moment while it's happening, without any planning or preparation. You do it on the fly, you would say, meaning you're already moving, you're already on the go, you're already going. Yeah, on the fly. That's a phrase that I use quite a bit because that's often how I do things when I'm teaching. Figure out or work out. Are they interchangeable? Yes, they are interchangeable. They're pretty similar in meaning. I would use them almost interchangeably. Is there a difference? Well, figure out if there's a difference. Figure out suggests that you realized something. I figured it out. Maybe it just came to you, or maybe you rested for a little bit and then your mind sort of did it. Work something out or work it out does suggest that you did some effort. So if you work something out or work out something, that usually implies maybe a little more effort. So that's probably the biggest difference. So if you could use them, but there's overlap between them. There's some overlap between them. There's cases where you could use either one and people would understand what you meant. But I'm going to work out the problem. That means I might have to think about it a bit. I'll figure out the problem means the answer might just come to me. Or it could also mean I might have to work it out. We got a greetings from Jacob in India. Welcome to you too, sir. Difference between bribe and corruption. Okay, so corruption is a state. Corruption is a situation. So a bribe is a specific act. So, and it's specifically the act of I'm going to give money to an official. Let's say it's a government official, but it's not necessarily always a government official. It could be business, but let's use government. I tell this government official, my company will provide $10 million for your reelection campaign if you make this law that can benefit us. That's a bribe. And if the official accepts that bribe, he's engaged in corruption. That's the difference. Okay. So the bribe is my offer. There's a quid pro quo. I give this and you give that. That's the bribe. Corruption is when it's accepted. Corruption is when the bribe has been taken. And when there's a condition in which bribes are often accepted, we can say that a lot of corruption exists in a certain situation, right? So a place where corruption exists is a place where bribes almost certainly exist. And sometimes corruption becomes so extent that the bribes aren't even direct. It just sort of happens unspoken without people even saying it, right? Because sometimes you don't have to say things to let people know what you want. What about for that matter? Like, I don't smoke or drink for that matter. In that case, you're saying I don't smoke. And for that matter, meaning in addition, I also don't drink. Okay, so that's the sense of the for that matter in this case. So I don't smoke and I also don't drink for that matter. So you could, it's a way of indicating that you don't do something else. Or would it always be used in a negative sense? I'm not sure about that. I'd have to think about that one to be completely sure. Remember, I'm doing this on the fly, so some of them I might have to think about a little bit more to give a most precise answer. But just looking at it off the top of my head, I would say the difference is, or the meaning of that is that it's in addition. From South Africa, I'm honored by being recognized. You, sir, we need you so much. Well, I'm honored by your watching our videos. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching. We've got some coworkers here from South Africa, so it's good to hear. It's good to hear from you down there. Please, can you? I missed that one. It went by too quickly. Can you explain modal verbs for us? Well, that's a big question. We might have to do a video on that to go into more detail. Modal verbs is a very big topic that that can take some time to really get into. What are modal verbs? That's not something I can answer in just a few minutes on a live stream. We'd have to go into detail on that. But modal verbs, just the quick version of that is verbs like might, could, and would. Verbs that are expressing a situation other than something is the case, right? I ran, running happened, I was running, I am running now, I will run. These are just facts, things that happened or didn't. But if I said I might run, okay, now we're getting into a modal situation. We're getting into a situation where it's not just a fact anymore because it might happen if I ran. Okay, so now that's a hypothetical. We're getting into a more of a modal situation. So that's the quickest way of explaining what a modal verb is. It's a verb that's expressing an idea other than just what's going on. Hey, if you want to know more about modal verbs, you can check out our video on this exact topic. So Sarah has a verb. Sarah has a video on modal verbs: should, ought, and must. Those are 3 common modal verbs. Should you watch it? Yes, you should. You ought to watch it. You must watch it. Okay. And can be a secondhand experience watching live news and travel vlogs. You can have, secondhand experiences by doing that, right? A secondhand experience. So firsthand means direct. You did it. Secondhand means from another person. So something it's firsthand, it's direct. Something that's secondhand, it's indirect. It's from another person. So if here's another case of using secondhand. I have firsthand information that Bob is quitting. Bob told me. So that's firsthand information. He told me. That's direct, firsthand information. I have secondhand information that Bob is quitting. Bob told Fred, who told me. That's secondhand. I heard it from Fred, who heard it from Bob. So there's your difference between firsthand and secondhand. And obviously, firsthand is a little more reliable, a little more solid. But if the secondhand source is reliable, is good, then it's good. So if Fred doesn't lie, if Fred doesn't spread rumors, if Fred is a friend of Bob's, that's good information too. And so if you're watching travel vlogs and it's a good channel, that's a good secondhand source. You can get good information. So we got some more people saying hello. Very good. I'd say that sort out and figure out are interchangeable. They are. They are very interchangeable. Sort out. I think sort out seems more like it seems more British English than me. We do say that in the U.S., but I know my British friends are more likely to say things like, "You need to sort it out." Sorry for that bad accent, but they'll say things, "You need to sort it out," or "It's sorted." And then we don't say that quite as much. But yes, sort out could be interchangeable with figure out. I would agree with that. Haggling and bargain. What's the difference between haggling and bargain? Okay, so haggling is the process. Now, let's say bargaining. Haggling and bargaining. Those two are pretty similar. So if they're let's say I want to buy, let's say I'm in the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul and I want to buy a rug, and the guy says, well, the rug is 100 Turkish lira, and I say, well, that's too much. How about I'll give you 50 Turkish lira? And he says, I can't sell it for less than 90. And I say, well, I can go 55. Now we're haggling. We could even say we're bargaining. Okay, because I'm trying to get a lower price and he's trying to get the highest possible price. So we're trying to come to some arrangement on what I will pay for this rug. And you could use haggling or bargaining kind of interchangeably. Haggling has more of a sense of the struggle of it. To me, there's more of an emotional sense of there's a battle going on. And then bargaining is more of a neutral sense of it's just a negotiation. And then haggling is more of a sense of an emotional as well as an economic interchange where I'm really trying to get a deal. He's really trying to get a deal as well. So I would say haggling has more of an emotional connotation than bargaining does. And just the word bargain, not using it as a verb, but using it as a noun. A bargain is a deal. A bargain is a good deal, a good price. So if somebody says, "Hey, I bought that rug and I only paid 50 Turkish lira for it," somebody might say, "That's a good bargain. That's a bargain." Okay, so there's your difference. You wouldn't say that's a haggle. That wouldn't really make sense. But you could say that's a bargain. That would make sense. That's a haggle. Haggle as a noun really refers to the combat, the discussion to try to get the best deal. So some people like haggling, some people don't like haggling. I'm not a big fan of haggling. I'm not very good at it, but I am a fan of a bargain. I like to get a good bargain. All right. We got a thanks. Good. Thanks to you as well for listening. A hi from Madagascar. That's great. Madagascar is an interesting country, a very interesting history. I've actually read a book on a queen of Madagascar, Ravalona, I think, Ravalonova. I think I may be pronouncing it wrong, but she was from the 19th century. So very interesting ruler of Madagascar a long time ago. So I know a little bit about the country. Let's see. Do we have any other questions or comments? These are really good, and it's very good to get this kind of feedback from you guys. Let's see. From Pakistan, wish to learn more about English. Well, the good news is the English Danny channel is a great place to go. We have more videos that you can watch to learn more about English, and I hope to have more live streams like this coming up every week. Where you can do that. Is it acceptable to say, I spent a great time rather than I had a great time? I came across this on common grammatical mistakes in an exam. Well, I would not say that. I would not say I spent a great time. I would definitely say I had a great time. I would just say I spent time. I spent some time doing it. That's fine. You could say I spent time doing it. But you wouldn't say I spent a great time. And part of the reason for it is because time is one of those words. It's kind of like if you know the difference between count and non-count nouns. And I believe we have an English Danny channel video on that, which explains some of the difference there. Saying a great time seems a little weird because time is one of those kind of a non-count noun where it sounds a little awkward to a native speaker to say, I spent a great time. But you can say, I spent time just generally, but had a great time is what you would say there. I had a great time. That makes sense. What is negotiation? Well, negotiation is a discussion between two people to try to come to some kind of arrangement, some kind of agreement. The most common kind of negotiation that I often think of is a business negotiation. But another kind of negotiation is just sales. So you go to a shop. If I go to a shop and I say, I'd like to buy that rug, and the seller says, you can have it for 100 lira. And I say, I'll pay 50. We're in a negotiation. We're haggling. Or you could say, we're in a negotiation. We're negotiating. So we're in a negotiation. That's the noun. We're negotiating. That's the verb. Negotiate means to discuss something with someone, to try to come to an agreement. Can we use while with the past perfect? I think so. Can you think of an example sentence that you're trying to use there? And I'll try to see if that works in the specific case that you're thinking of. There may be something specific that you're thinking of. So I'll try to address that if I can. So past perfect. Usually you can. Okay, so past perfect, you're going to talk about something that had been done. Yeah, I think so. Here's an example. You could say, while I was doing this live stream, A new video had just been posted to the English Danny channel. I don't know that that's true, but I think I could say that. So you can use it. You can use while something was happening, something else had already happened. So even while he was speaking, the other person had already finished his test. Yeah, so you're saying that something had been completed while something was going on. So yeah, that you could do that. Yeah, I think you could do that. Yeah. So let's see. Anything else? Please do. It's really helpful. What's the opposite of hungry? Full. The opposite of hungry would be full, or the opposite of hungry. If I wanted to be, if I wanted to make a joke, I could say is Austria, because Hungary, Hungary, is a country in Europe, and it used to be joined with Austria as an empire called the Empire of Austria-Hungary. So, but hungry, I think you mean in the sense of I need to eat. So I think the opposite of hungry is full. Opposite of hungry is full. What's the difference between trade and business? So trade is more of a give and take between people, and then business is just a general word for anything being done. So let me see. Actually, trade has other meanings though. Trade. So trade. When you're trading, you're buying and selling. But well, here I'll give you an example. So when Ford makes a car, right? They're not engaged in trade, but they are engaged in business, right? They're just making the car, right? They're engaged in business. They're building a product. And then later they'll sell that product, yes, and they will get involved in trade. And when they need the parts to make the car, they're going to engage in trade because they're going to buy the parts they need from people that supply them. Like they're going to need rubber for the tires. They're going to need metal for the body. They're going to need glass for the windows and the front windshield. So they'll engage in trade in order to carry on their business. So yeah, business, trade is a part of business is a way of thinking about it. So business will include trade, but include other things. There's other activities like just purchasing. It'll also involve negotiations. It'll also involve advertising. Like, so if there's an advertising company, are they really engaged in trade? No, they're not buying and selling. What they're doing is they're making an advertisement. Okay, but then they may engage in a little trade when they sell their advertisement or offer it to a TV channel, say, for example. But the making of the ad or the making of advertising, that's a part of business, right? So that's really the difference there. What are my qualifications? My qualifications, I have a master's and a PhD in English, language and literature. From a university in the United States. So those are my qualifications. And then I've been teaching. I also have some experienced qualifications. I've taught at American universities for about 7 or 8 years. And I've taught overseas at overseas universities this is now my 8th year teaching overseas. So about 15 years university teaching experience, teaching everything from literature courses to negotiation courses, business English, and just English grammar and English speaking and conversation. So I've taught a lot of people, including native speakers and not native speakers, about the English language. Please, a deal, a bargain, the same thing. A deal and a bargain. Yeah, again, this is a case where there's going to be a lot of overlap there. That's a deal. That's a bargain. A lot of times you're going to want to say that those are just about the same. So would you say that something is a deal or is a bargain? Well, the thing is, you could also say, I'm more likely to say that something is a good or a bad deal. You could say something's a good bargain or a bad bargain, but it's more common to say something like, I got a good deal, to mean a bargain. So a bargain already implies that it was probably good, whereas a deal is more neutral. So you would say good deal to specify. No, it was a really good deal. Now, deal can mean good, but sometimes you might specify specifically by saying, no, it was a good deal, or it was a bad deal. I made a deal, but it was a bad deal. I didn't win out of it. So, yeah, I think there's the difference there. Even though, again, there's a lot of overlap with those two words, deal and bargain. Let's see. How am I? I'm good. How are you? I hope you're doing well. Let's see. How to speak English like a native. Well, I think one of the it's difficult to do, but the key is a lot of listening and a lot of practice. So you should listen to people speaking in English, and practice it when you can. One way that you can do it as well is you can also practice singing things and learning some English songs and singing them, because that can also help you a bit too. I've noticed that that sometimes that's more fun to learn the lyrics of a song, and then you also learn the sort of the meaning and the feeling of the words because there's an emotion in the song. So that might be something that can help you out if you're having trouble. Is get a song that you like in English and learn how to sing it. That might help you. Am I using per se correctly? Now, per se is a Latin phrase. It comes from the Latin language, which we borrowed into English. We're not dating per se. So yes, that is correct. It's just that we hang out and get to know each other more. So yes, you are using that correctly. That is the meaning of it. But you could probably tell that, and it looks like per se, right? But it's usually pronounced per se. Per se means by itself or in itself. So we're not dating. We're not dating per se. We're not dating by itself. If you in the literal meaning of that word, we're just hanging out. That's all we're doing. So you could use it that way. Yep. So yeah, that's a phrase that we borrowed from Latin. What is the name given to the time difference between the nationals? Well, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. The time difference between who, for example, because there's different meanings for different time differences. We have time zones. So, for example, in the United States, there's the Eastern. So if you live in New York or Washington, D.C., you're in the Eastern time zone. And then if you live in California, you're in the Western time zone. And that would be a name given to that difference. But you could also say there's the international date line, and people on one side of it are on one day, like, for example, April 17th, and people on the other side of it are on the next day, say April 18th. How can I remove spelling mistakes? Okay, so the way to get better at spelling is to read a lot. I tell even native speakers this because native speakers often make mistakes. Learning how to spell in English is very difficult. The spelling of English is very strange because the reason why it's strange is because the sounds of words changes quicker than spelling changes. And so a lot of spelling of words reflects the way that words were pronounced 400 years ago. So the pronunciation has changed, but the spelling has remained the same. And I can't explain all the reasons for that, but that's why that is. And so some words are difficult for native speakers to understand. The way to get better at spelling is to read a lot. The more you read, your mind will start to recognize, wait a minute, that just looks wrong. And so you will just instinctively recognize, that's not the right spelling, because you will have seen the word spelled correctly many times. So read a lot and read high level things. So don't read just like a newspaper here or an internet article there, but read published books, meaning that an editor has corrected the spelling very well. And read like literature or philosophy or something you enjoy, history, something that you like, because if you like it, you're more likely to do it. And read a bunch of things. And the more you are exposed to English words, the better you will get at spelling. In the COVID context, what are jab? A jab is a shot. So an injection A jab. So a jab means to stab something. And so just like they're stabbing you in the arm with the needle, they're injecting you. You could say it's a jab. And that used to be predominantly, they would say that in British English, but we've adopted it now in the US. I hear even Americans and Canadians referring to jabs now. So COVID is such an international situation that this word has gotten spread around more. So yeah, can flat out mean downright? Yes, it can. Yes, it can. That is flat out wrong. That is downright wrong. You could say that. It can, and there can be overlap between the two. You are flat out correct. Per day, per and by, per day, by day, day by day. Yeah. So what is the difference between those? I have to think about that one for a second. So per diem is another use of per. So well, one difference is that by has other meanings that per doesn't. So per is for each. For each. So per day, for each day. But by also has the means of by means of using something. So I came here by car. You couldn't say I came here per car. That wouldn't make sense because per doesn't mean by means of. It only means for each. So so you could say here, you could say, but you could, in the cases where by does mean for each, you could use per or by interchangeably. So I do this day by day. I do this per day. Take one per day. That makes sense. You could say that again and tell me about it. Are these synonymous? In feeling, yeah, they just about are. It just has a feeling of just a general agreement, a general sort of, yes, I agree with that feeling. Yes, they basically are. I mean, you can get into some technical differences, but yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, has the same sort of feeling like you get that again. Tell me about it. Let's look at what a difference might be. Tell me about it might be more for a negative thing, right? Boss is terrible. Oh yeah, tell me about it. He is terrible. You could say that again. You could use that, but usually you don't want them to say that again because the boss might hear you. You don't want him to hear. And so tell me about it is a little bit better for agreeing with a negative sentiment. Whereas you could say that again. You could do that, but it's a little better to use for positive statements only. Disgust. Disgust. I do pronounce it that way. Disgust. And that does sound like disgust. 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 I feel nothing but disgust. We discussed it yesterday. Do you hear a difference? I'm not sure that there's a big difference there, the way I pronounce those words. Maybe a little bit, but yeah, he turned away from the site with disgust. We discussed it. There's more of a D, I guess, in the discussed version. All right, these are really good questions. We've gone for a long time here, so I'm going to wrap up our live stream in a few minutes here. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I really appreciate everybody tuning in today. This has been great, and I hope it's been helpful for you, and we'll see you next week. All right, see you next time.